You're listening to Unmuted Love. Hi there, I'm C. Eshelman, and with 35 years as a marriage and family therapist and 25 years as a parent of 2 children I brought home from the foster care system, I want to welcome you here to Unmuted Love Podcast, the one place where nothing is off limits to say out loud about parenting children from difficult beginnings.
Stop for a minute, stop and breathe for a minute. Long it over your head, try to listen instead, won't you? Think for a minute, who you wanna be for a minute. Don't get over your head, you're like everyone else, aren't you?
Sometimes it's real sweet around here, and sometimes it ain't so pretty, because this is 100% Unmuted Love. So let's go.
You'll be just
Hey parents, this is C. Get the help you need to end destructive and chaotic behavior in your home while parenting children from difficult beginnings. I know you need help, and the Love Plus parenting model actually works. I'm inviting you to work with me personally for 6 months in my virtual therapeutic parent program, and I guarantee you results, or 100% of your investment back. How is that for a blue ribbon deal? I'm looking forward to working with you. See you on the inside. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unmuted Love. Today, I'm having the opportunity to talk with one of my favorite people, Karyn Speakman. She is one of the parents in the Love Matters Parenting Society membership. And also, she works at the Attached Place as a parent moderator for the membership. So awesome sauce. She's the best. Everybody loves Karyn. But does everybody know Karyn? So today, I want to talk to Karyn and allow her a little bit of opportunity to be seen and heard and understood as an adoptive parent. So I'm going to just start there. Karyn, good morning.
Good morning.
So I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about your family configuration right now and how you got here, right? Your story.
So we have 4 kids that are adopted, 3 of which are from foster care, and 1 is through a private adoption with a family member. And my husband works about an hour away from home, so it's kind of me with the kids quite a bit. Our kids range from 16 to 12, and we have 2 boys, 2 girls. Oh yeah, we have a couple dogs. We have a lot of cats. We kind of live in the country so that our kids can be a little bit louder and we don't have really close neighbors because that's always a good move on our part.
Yeah, for sure. But you do live in a neighborhood where your family lives close by, right? Can you say a little
We
bit
do.
about
My mom lives across the street. Even though she's not really responsible for childcare or anything, we don't really ask anything of her. It's really nice to have extra eyes on them. And we live in a neighborhood where it's a dead end street, so the kids can go out and play with the other neighborhood kids. And there's a lot of good supervision there.
How old were you when you adopted your first child?
I was 26 when Zach was born,
Oh my
and
God.
I had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah.
But, we were told that we couldn't have biological children due to some health issues on my end. We looked into doing IVF or some kind of infertility treatment, and it just didn't speak to us like that was the right move for us. We settled on, not settled for, but we settled on wanting to adopt children, and we weren't quite sure how that was going to happen, but Zach just kind of came to us unexpectedly. And then after that, we decided to dip our toe into some foster care to see if we can help some kids. And some of them needed to stay. They were just ours.
So 26 years old, you adopt the baby. How old was Zach when he came?
We were in the room when Zach was born.
Oh, awesome.
And Zach's birth mom lived with us for a while. So we got to experience a lot of that prenatal care,
Mhm.
which was really, really special.
Yeah, and really different, right, from the other kids that you adopted.
His was kind of the only experience we had where we were really close with birth mom before he was born. And then the others, we've just established relationships later on.
I'm curious a little bit, I'm always curious about attachment, and I'm wondering, is that different for you, the experience of adopting a baby that you really were on the baby journey with versus a kid who comes through foster care that you adopt? Is the experience different for you attachment-wise?
I wouldn't say for me attachment wise, but I would say for the kids, it's different for them. Lily came to us when she was just a day old, and she was from foster care. There are so many things that happen in those very early months, days, and years that I can't get back with the other kids. We have two that were adopted a little bit later at the age of almost 2 and 3.5. Their experience as babies were very different than what Zach and Lily experienced. Even though Zach came to us at a very, very early age, and so did Lily, they both have some diagnoses that we deal with and some behaviors and some attachment things that we work with. But the younger two definitely struggle more as far as attachment and connection go. And I think that has a lot to do with lack of nurturing that they received when they were really, really young, and some of the experiences they had when they were going through the system or before they were found out and in the system.
So I just want to talk about the attachment piece again a little bit. So you said not for you because you feel attached to all, which is awesome, but you can discern a difference in the attachment between the two that came to you so young at birth in one day versus those that came at an older age. What do you think that is that you're seeing in them in terms of attachment toward you? What are the differences?
I think when we first got the older two, it was a safe environment for them to come home to. Almost immediately, they were put into a life and an environment that was safe and loving and comforting and provided whatever they needed. And the younger two, they didn't have that. And so they don't have that sense of felt safety in there that they can just show up to someone's house and, oh, these people are going to take care of me and love me and my needs are going to be met. They don't feel that in themselves. And so that's probably going to take a lifetime to earn on our part. I mean, it's worth it, absolutely worth it, but it's going to take a lifetime for us to kind of prove ourselves to them. And that's what we signed up for. I didn't know that, but that's what we signed up for.
Right. That's what I'm hearing. How would you know that? Really, because that doesn't get said too much, but it's also a lifetime for them trying to figure out, that they're safe with you, and are they safe with you? And are you like everybody else, or are you like an imprint that I don't remember, but I have this feeling that you're not safe despite what I live with every day, right? That's how they sort of experience it.
Right.
What do you wish you knew before you adopted that you know now?
Honestly, I wish I would have known the information that was in your curriculum from the Parenting Society. I mean, that would be gold, but we didn't have that. We had some trainings from the foster agency and adoption agency and the state, but it wasn't enough. I mean, really they need beds, so they don't want to scare people off, right? But we really needed a lot more information. We needed more information about what the kids had experienced because they weren't really honest with us about that either. We needed more skills on how to handle our own regulation before trying to teach that to children who have a hard time learning it. Really, we were just very ill-equipped.
So what have you learned since then? I mean, I hear you talking about regulation and about what, the kids experienced and how that impacts them. What do you think specifically would have been good to know? Because you're going to parent kids, right? You're going to parent these kids. And obviously not so obviously. Now it's obvious, but before maybe wasn't so obvious that you were going to have to parent them differently.
Yeah, I really thought that we would just adopt these kids and then they would kind of fall in line like everybody else in our family. And, we would just be one happy household. That was really not it. Because when we brought our kids home, there's a very short honeymoon phase. And then all of a sudden we started seeing these behaviors and we didn't know how to address them because we were raised at no fault of our own parents, but we were raised in households where there was a lot of shaming and blaming and punishment. And we couldn't bring that into our parenting because when we did, it didn't work and it backfired and blew up in our faces big time. So we figured out after many years that we were acting out and responding out of our own dysregulation based on what we learned and we were taught as kids. So we had to really address our own stuff and work on figuring out why we were responding to certain behaviors the way that we were and how we could adjust that to meet our kids' needs in a safer feeling way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, most of us were parented traditionally, right? And
Yes.
traditional parenting has, like you and your husband, right? A little bit of shame, and at least, if not a lot. And it's your fault that I'm mad at you kind of stuff. And if you weren't being like this, you wouldn't get a spanking, but you're going to get a spanking and you're going to be punished for your behavior if it's not in line. And the punishments are going to get worse and worse, bigger and bigger if you don't learn your lesson, right? Is that
Right. From someone who came from a pretty stable base, I can come out of that and address it and heal it and feel pretty comfortable with myself. Now, someone who's experienced a lot of neglect or trauma, they come into a household where they're parented like that and they feel like, whoa, what are you doing? This is just one step closer to where I was before. And this is like the yelling is the precursor to the hitting, right? And so they were always waiting for that next step to happen. And they were always on edge, you know?
Yeah.
So we had to find ways to kind of disarm them and bring them down as far as their hypervigilance and their fight, flight, freeze, befriend kind of responses. We had to help them figure out ways to not have that alarm set off every single time they encountered something small, you know?
How did you figure out what to do for yourselves?
You had a big hand in that because really I showed up to your office and I wanted you to fix my kids. And that didn't work out the way I had hoped it would because you weren't interested in that. You wanted to fix me. So I had a really hard conversation with you one time in your office. And I was kind of waiting for you to call our sweet boy in to kind of give him what for and tell him he needed to be a good boy for his mom. And really, you sat me on the couch and said, honey, you need to look at yourself and you need to figure out what you need so that you can help him because you're not doing it right now. You know, it's not working. Really, that led me to a path of my own healing. There was no curriculum to work through, I don't think at the time. Then when it was available, it was really hard for me to actually do it because I had a lot of shame and blame on myself that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't going to be able to actually change. I kept coming back to it really is the kid's fault when really it wasn't. We really kind of listened to you. And I went and found a therapist. I went and found a psychiatrist that gave me medication because it really was needed. That helped me regulate enough so that I could do a lot of self care practices and follow through with it, like yoga and eating well, walking, having really healthy conversations with the people that I love and care about. And also, it gave me the confidence to kind of work through the curriculum that was in the Parenting Society. And that was the game changer. Absolutely.
I think when parents listen to you, you're sort of like Yoda. I mean, you've come a long way and it's not perfect in your house, right?
No, not at all.
Excuse me.
Not at all.
Right. So what got fixed?
Really, I feel like I came to a point of radical acceptance. I can't say the same for Rich because I'm not him, but I radically accept my life the way that it is. I know that on vacations, we're going to take two separate cars every time. And I'm okay with that. We found a good routine in that. I know that our kids are 12 to 16 years old and most of them can't stay home alone and they need a lot of supervision. I'm okay with that. I know that some of our kids may not go to college and they may struggle kind of getting on their feet as young adults, but I'm ready for it. I'm not dreading it. I'm excited to see where their life leads them because it's theirs. You know, I will be honest, there was a time that I had an 8-year-old at the police station telling the officer, I just can't do this. He is so violent. And I don't know how to stop him. Well, I couldn't stop him. And when my goal was to just stop it, it didn't work because it was the wrong goal. So now my goal is just to kind of walk them through life and let them make their choices and try and keep them safe, give lots of supervision, lots of encouragement, but let them see where their life is going to take them and where they want it to go. I don't control that.
That feels super enlightened. seems hard. It seems like that's like, I don't know, like maybe turning your thinking upside down or something. How did you come to radical acceptance? Like most people are really trying to get their kids to sit in a chair in school, come home and do their homework, take it back to school, get it there, don't get in trouble, do your chores, go to bed
Yeah,
on time, take a bath, do what you're supposed to do, listen to your mom and dad, kind of thing.
I think we're pretty lax on some things that aren't as important.
You're not
You
saying school's not important, are you?
I'm saying school is super, super important. Do we do homework with our kids? Only if we're asked. Do we force them to do anything or shame them if they have bad grades? No. We don't really withhold privileges either. We give a lot of support. The radical acceptance piece, I think it was hard getting there because I just didn't get it. I really kept thinking the way that probably my parents thought, raising neurotypical kids for the most part in a society that has a lot of judgment for the way that people parent, right? And I had to kind of not care anymore what people thought. And so when people look at me sideways or question why I do something a certain way, it's because it's what works for my kids. And my kids aren't their kids, and my kids are not neurotypical. And so I meet them where they're at. And there's not a whole lot of expectation. The bar is low when it needs to be low. And that's usually. And I think it was hard getting there, but I really think that it was so freeing because I was able to see my kids for who they were and not who I wanted them to be or who I thought they should be. We have, I don't know, just embrace the quirk. I
Yeah,
work,
embrace the quirk. Let's get t-shirts that say embrace
right?
the quirk.
Like I work at a school, very minimal hours, but just so that I can be around kids. And I'm always drawn to the quirky ones. I'm always drawn to them. And so it's no surprise that my kids ended up being quirky kids, but I'm quirky. And I've learned how to embrace some of my own needs too, because I have a lot of sensory needs that I've had my entire life and I never knew that they existed because I just felt uncomfortable. Now I know like certain movements that my body needs or certain clothes that I prefer to wear. And it's the same with our kids. When you start seeing those things in yourself, you can start seeing maybe what other people might need too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my story is very similar to yours in that regard. I didn't know I had sensory issues. I didn't know it until I had my kids who had them. And then I learned it was a thing. Like, oh, it's a thing. It has a name and there are things you can do. And, like, why do I wear such big clothes? Why do I wear shoes that are a size, too big? And because it annoys the heck out of me if I don't. But I just thought it was weird. But I love that embrace the quirk. I'm gonna make t-shirts for sure out of that.
But our family we all have our own things. And I think somehow over the years we've been able to learn to embrace each other's stuff and know that even parents struggle. I snapped at one of my kids the other day and he snapped right back. And then I gave it a minute and he came back in the kitchen and I said, "Hey, I really didn't mean to snap at you, but I didn't hear you. The exhaust fan for the oven was on. I didn't hear you." So normally if we just have that little interaction of, "Oh, I couldn't hear you and I just snapped and I didn't mean to, it just happened," then we move on. And in the past, if I would have snapped at somebody, it would have been the end of our day.
Right? The whole day would have been taken up in the garage, as I understand.
Yes, absolutely. Our crash pad garage, which has not been used in probably 6 months.
That is awesome because that was being used a lot.
Yes, like half of my day.
Every day.
Mhm.
We used to refer in the membership, for those of you who don't know, is we used to refer to Karyn as Karyn of the garage.
Yes. The garage was the only safe place we had that really, really angry kids could thrash stuff around without engaging other kids.
I want to go back to what you said a couple minutes ago, where you said it's so freeing to not have traditional expectations of our kids and to have radical acceptance and to understand that it's their lives, and that we're just here to guide them and support them to unfold however they unfold. It is completely freeing. It just takes all the pressure off of stuffing them into a box that doesn't fit them.
It's brought a lot of fun to our home.
Mm.
Because our home was really unhappy for a long time. And I didn't really like to have people over because what if one of the kids misbehaved? I didn't want to go out and do different outings in public because what if they couldn't behave there? Now our family's kind of surrounded by other families that have quirky kids and other families who have adopted kids and other families whose kids lost parents. Our house has kind of become a hub for them. And so every day after school, we have different nieces and nephews that come over and different neighbor kids, and they don't bat an eye at anything that my kids do. That's really special to me because I feel like because we were so uptight and trying to control our kids before, we didn't have that surrounding us. We were very isolated. And I think that was probably the hardest part for me is I felt very, very isolated as a parent because nobody saw what was going on behind closed doors. And if I would have told them, I would have felt like I was going to be judged as a parent. Like, oh, well, how could you have a kid that acts like that? What are you doing wrong? But really, I think just embracing it and rolling with it, I think it's really enriched everybody's life to kind of be who they are unapologetically. That's really big. Like, I can just be who I am. I can sing in the kitchen. I can dance down the hallway. I can get loud and boisterous when I'm feeling passionate, and it doesn't set anybody's alarms off. Everybody just gets to be who they are.
What a wonderful thing you've done for yourself. When there are people in your home, it's like a judgment-free zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
There aren't people in your home who are going to judge you or judge your kids. And you've created that. And you probably have educated and informed people who didn't quite get it, right? And
absolutely. A lot of our immediate community is because we have learned to be vulnerable with the people that we feel we can trust. That's hard to do when your life is a mess. But I started being honest with people like, hey, this is really hard. Hey, my kids do this and you wouldn't believe it. Or, hey, I'm responding in this way and I don't know how to stop it. And, just being honest with people about what your life is really like. Because when you're just hiding in the shadows and closing the door every day, nobody knows.
And you don't want people to know.
No.
Yeah. Nobody knows and you don't want them to know because it's
right.
Scary. It's scary. And also, there's this feeling that Child Protective Services will swoop down and accuse you of not taking good care of the kids because the kids are so difficult that you are ending up doing some things that kids that are neurotypical would never experience, but because they don't do those things, like I was just as I was saying that, I was remembering the time when you went away and you came home and the front window had been.
Oh, yes.
Like, can you tell that story?
Yes, we went to my sister bought us tickets to a Giants game and we went to the Bay Area, which is like 3 hours away. And we weren't driving, so we didn't have our own transportation. And we had set it up to where all of the kids would be at home with one of my sisters and my niece. And then our most difficult child at the time was going to be with a friend. And that friend was supposed to keep him until we got home. And we were about an hour and a half from home. And I got a text saying that she dropped him off early. So that meant my sister and my niece had all 4 kids. And I knew that adult and child connection was not a good one at the time. I'm like, Rich, we got to hurry. We got to go home. And so we rushed home. About a mile from the house, we get a phone call. And my sister, who's older than I am and had an in-home daycare, was in hysterics, and she was crying and saying that something had been broken and she didn't know what to do and she was scared of our kid. And we pull up to the house and this 6 or 7 foot window in the front of our house, like floor to ceiling window, was just shattered. And everybody met us out on the lawn. The kids are crying, my sister's crying, my niece is crying. And, I didn't quite know what to do. So I had her go home and told her we'd kind of deal with it. What ended up happening where there was like an issue over a board game, and Sonny had upended the game and flipped it over because he was mad. He was losing. And my sister got angry with him and demanded that he pick up those pieces right now. You're not doing anything until you pick up these pieces, and you're not going to speak to anybody. And I'm going to tell your mom. And it was all of this really hard pressure on him when he was very dysregulated and couldn't handle it. So he went outside and started throwing rocks at my house and ended up breaking a window. We have a camera on the front of the house, and I saw on the camera, he had broken the window. Then he ran to the front door and opened it and yelled, "I didn't mean for that much damage to happen." And then he slammed the door and ran back to the middle of the street where he felt he was safer away from the adult. And then the next time he came to the door was locked. And my sister had locked him out because she was scared of him. And that broke me, because regardless of the damage that he did, this is his home. And he has been locked out of places before. And this was the only place I never wanted him locked out of, regardless of how hard it was. So we never had that sister watch him again, because the dynamics there were just never going to change. And that's okay. That's fine. But I was so angry about that darn window. But then I saw the video of him trying to explain, "I didn't mean for that much damage to happen." And I thought, oh my God, like that poor kid, he really did make a mistake. It was a stupid mistake, but he made a big, expensive, stupid mistake. And he did feel remorse for it, you know? And when he tried to connect and make it better, that connection wasn't available. So, we had him work off the money to replace the really expensive window. And there wasn't a whole lot of discussion about it because he knew.
He knew, and
We,
it was an accident. He didn't
yeah,
mean it to happen.
yeah.
Cause and effect is a little weak in our kids, right? So
Mhm.
throw this rock at this window, but I don't mean to break it.
Right.
And that was true. He didn't mean to break it.
Yeah. But, there's just no talking to them when they're not regulated. If you're trying to get through to them during that time, it's like the worst time ever, because it's going to backfire. So now, we especially learned from that situation, we wait. We don't talk things out in the moment usually. Sometimes it takes a day for them to regulate. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's a week. Sometimes it's longer, but the safer they feel with us, the less time it takes them to regulate usually. We only see long periods of dysregulation, usually when big transitions are coming up now, like a school break or holidays, birthdays, stuff like that.
So, Karyn, one last question.
Yes.
What do you do really to take care of yourself? You mentioned some things, because I think that's hard, right? You have 4 kids. You do have a lot of people around you. Some people don't have any family around them, right? What is the most easy to do that you learned you could do that actually helped?
The only thing I can think of right now are like things that I do for my physical body. I have an acupressure mat that I lay on at night. That really helps because the body keeps the score, right? I live in a very high stress life. And so by the end of the day, my body usually hurts. And it's usually my upper body, my shoulders, my arms, and it's achy, almost like you have the flu. And I am very uncomfortable by the end of the day. So I typically lay on an acupressure mat, or I use like a massager on my arms, or yoga helps. Really taking care of my physical body is really, really important. I get
Stress.
a lot of sleep when I can. The other thing I really learned to do is I give myself time out when I need it. If I just need to lay in bed for an hour and it's available to me, then I force myself to do it. And I don't guilt myself. I used to fall back in bed when the kids went to school because honestly, I was probably depressed and I was exhausted because they were just depleting everything I had. And now if I do that, it's like, oh, you're doing this because it's a gift to yourself, not because, you're exhausted and can't do anymore. So really just giving myself the same kind of breaks I would give my kids.
Yeah, I love that. I love that that's one of the things that you've learned is how important you are to the mix, right? You have to take care of you because all that stress leads to body pain and other kinds of diseases and symptoms of other kinds of immune problems, things like
Mm,
that, right? That come from too much stress for too long. That toxic stress is too much. Sometimes it can be really relieved by small adjustments regularly, right? Just
mhm.
small adjustments and taking yourself more seriously, like you matter and you have to put yourself ahead of some things sometimes.
And I will say, when things are really hard, if I distance myself from the parenting membership, from the parenting society, that's when my mindset starts to change into old habits
Mm.
where I maybe can't stay as regulated or it's harder for me to respond lovingly. So it's really important for me to stay very close to the parenting society because those people, I have a lot of people around me, but I don't really ask a lot of them. I'm giving a lot.
Mhm.
And when I'm in the parenting society, I feel like that's the only place I'm really, really, really surrounded by people who 1000% understand because they're living it too. And it makes me feel not so alone and isolated.
Yeah, it's a great group of people too. Just can't find that caliber of human anywhere, right?
Mm-mm.
These people are drawn together and they know what they've got and it is golden.
And no one has CPS on speed dial ready to call on you.
Right? Not even the therapist in the room.
Thank God.
So, Karyn, thank you so much for, I don't know, being so vulnerable and open and sharing. Mostly parents listen to this podcast. And every time someone talks from the heart about the truth, it gives them a little more hope, right? That they don't have to be, like I always say, drowning with their hair on fire because it's still really hard, right?
It's hard. It doesn't get easier, really. It just gets different.
Mhm.
And you feel more confident in how you live your life.
And you are taking better care of yourself most of the time. And when you don't, you know right away what the problem is, right?
Mhm.
Like, I have to
It's
take
me.
better care of myself.
Yep, it's always me.
So thank you again for coming and sharing your heart with the folks who listen to Unmuted Love. And
Thank you.
I'll get back with everybody in our next episode. So thanks, Karyn.
Thanks for having me.
Stop for a minute. Stop and breathe for a minute. Long it over your head. Try to listen instead, won't you? Think for a minute. Who you wanna be for a minute. Don't get over your head. You're like everyone else, aren't you? You could gain from being a bit nicer. Knowing to talk and when to shut your mouth.
The Unmuted Love podcast is hosted by me, C. Eshelman, attachment and trauma specialist at the Attach Place in Sacramento, California. Our podcast producer is the amazing Saya Clark, and our theme song is Nicer by Houses on the Hill, licensed through Epidemic Sound. Thank you for being such loyal listeners here on Unmuted Love. I'll see you all next week.
You'll be just fine.